All right. Well, I think we will get started. Thank you guys for coming to our 10th webinar. And I apologize to anyone who was trying to log on last week and having issues. I was on the road. I was actually with Devin, but we weren't able to get our Zoom to work. So it was a little complicated. But luckily, we were able to get it rescheduled this week. If you knew anyone that wanted to hop on last week but couldn't this week, just know that we post all of our videos right after this, maybe within a day, on the firearmsresearchcenter.org website under our video library. But thank you guys again. My name is Ashley Levinsky. I'm the executive director of the Firearms Research Center. And our speaker this month is Devin Perkins. And Devin is the founder and program leader of an organization called Kids to Kings that works with youth to reduce gang violence through firearms education. So I will let Devin take it from here. And when Devin's done, we'll do some Q&A.
How's everybody doing today? Like Ashley said, I am the founder of the Kids to Kings Youth Outreach Program. We are partnered with Walk the Talk America, the first non-compromise Second Amendment organization that focuses and is on the front line of the mental health fight, struggle, conversation, whatever have you. We do everything from homicide to suicide, and I guess I'll start with how the initial program started in my origins, a little bit about my background. So I'm originally from Virginia, grew up single family home, all of the typical, I guess, attributes that would put my path in the path or on the path that wouldn't necessarily be successful. So as I grew older, I got mentors. I was able to learn and grow and be shown the correct nepotism to be successful, especially in the firearms realm. I decided to start a program in conjunction, like I said, with Walk the Talk America to really focus on creating a program that would use firearms as a martial art to also apply and to provide the nepotism and the resources for children to grow and be successful. Obviously, because of my ethnicity, the Black community was my focus. So initially, we partnered with an after school program that had contracts for um, Title One charter schools. And as soon as we got that connection, we started pulling the kids essentially from their neighborhoods, bringing them to the range on hiking trips, on fitness workouts. We did everything to essentially recreate an environment that they would be able to thrive and grow in. So today, what we're all going to be talking about is what the program is actually anchored and based on, which is the study of complex trauma and CPTSD. This was also created essentially in conjunction with Zephyr Wellness from Jake Wiskerson. I call him Big Word Jake. That's one of my mentors, but he was the one that initially introduced the study of complex trauma and CPTSD to me, in which I then took that information back to my community and started to create the resources for us. So let's get into the PowerPoint. What is complex trauma slash CPTSD? Complex trauma and CPTSD affects individuals, mainly children, who have experienced chronic inescapable trauma, which they have little to no control over and continues for months or years at a time. So, how this directly correlates to my community is I have a bunch of kids who have trauma stories from as young as 3 years old to as old as 21 years old, where they have had to deal with not just their own mental struggles, but the parents and the guardians of them also struggling with similar issues. So, what we noticed is that if we are not focused on the youth, then there is really no hope for the future. So, as the mental health professionals, so to say, we decided to one, focus on the parents with our counselors and then the children with the other set of counselors. So, first thing that we always do is they actually get to view this exact same PowerPoint that you guys are viewing right now. So, they'll go through an entire mental health presentation. They'll go through workshops with myself and Kevin Dixie, who has also been an advocate for mental health and youth in his city of St. Louis. And then we ultimately start to teach them the value of life. We start from the very, very ground and basic levels. So we give them the information, we give them the tools to grow, and then we help usher them into success. But all of that stems from having to deal with this initial issue. One of these slides is going to be really, really small font. My apologies. But let's get to the next slide. Oh, that was it. What can cause complex trauma and CPTSD? Living in high crime and violent areas, parents with their own mental traumas, neglect, bullying, and abuse of all kinds. So essentially, if a child is not allowed to heal or find solutions to what they're dealing with every single day, it's going to be a fight, and it's going to start changing them, not only from a mental or psychological aspect, but actually their brain will start to change. Some of the characteristics that we always see, or the common characteristics that we see, are anger management issues. That's something that we deal with very frequently in the school system. Difficult with authority figures, parents, law enforcement officers, bosses, coaches, what have you. We have had to be mediators for a lot of these people with the children that are in a program, because we can sometimes get a message across to them that the structure of the other program would not be able to. So we take a very intimate and transparent approach when it comes to talking and communicating with the kids. Impulsiveness and need for immediate gratification. I think we all know that essentially when the brain isn't fully developed yet, it's going to essentially fixate on whatever is going to make them feel good or make them feel excited, anything that's going to feed that dopamine shot. So this is one of the main things that we deal with. I actually preach impulse control probably more than anything else in our program, simply because if you can control your impulse, that will transcend to the rest of your life and other aspects of your life, and you'll be able to make very sound and more accurate decisions. So that's my actual focus, is to make sure that they can clearly think, process information, and make great decisions. Commitment and unwilling to accept challenges. This is one that I would say is very easily combated once you remove them from whatever environment that they have grown up in. So one of our initial field trips or projects that we do is we go on a hiking trip, and there are no parents allowed, only because we don't want them to try to resort back to being babied or being coddled by their parents while they're on the trip, because it is a physically humbling, to say the least, and physically challenging activity. We climb to the top of Stone Mountain. We do a history lesson at the top of Stone Mountain and the significance of why young Black men should know the history of Stone Mountain. And then they get to have the sense of accomplishment by marching up to a mountain, learning something, and doing this all together with their friends. It's a lot easier. This is what we figured out, is that it's a lot easier to teach these kids, and they absorb information a lot better when they are not stuck in the same environment that you pulled them out of. Whether it's the excitement, the lack of familiarity, they just get it a lot faster. But yeah, that's it for that one. We'll go to the next slide. Ooh. Complex trauma develops at a subconscious level. So a lot of the times, these kids are dealing with issues that they aren't even necessarily aware of. And it's only because of the environments that they're growing up with and what they're becoming more familiar and desensitized to. I had one child in our program who told us a very, very wild story of him actually watching his father get shot by somebody else. And he told it as if it was a story that he had just seen on TV or something like that. It was pretty eye-opening to how much these children are dealing with and how fast that it becomes just a normal occurrence in their lives. So we really try to get them to understand, like, yo, you don't have to live like this. You don't always have to feel like this. And now that you have other figures in your life, if you need to escape from this, you have the outlets and the resources to do so. They enter into survival mode. This one is more prevalent when you get into the older adolescent ages. You're going to resort to what makes you feel most comfortable, most secure, most safe. And a lot of the times, whenever or when you experience the trauma, normally you're going to get stuck psychologically, and you won't be able to mature past the age unless you are actually ushered into the healing process. So that's a big thing that what we do, and that's why we try to get these kids at such a young age. Our age range goes between, I believe our youngest child is 5, our oldest just graduated college, and now he's the director of the program. Scientists have found that when the developing brain is chronically stressed, it releases a hormone that shrinks the size of the hippocampus. Yeah, Jake's gonna yell at me for that one. And an area of the brain responsible for processing emotions, memory, and stress management. So this is what I was referencing earlier, is that your brain, it's called epigenetics, but your brain will literally start changing based off of the environments that you grow up in. This is one of the main reasons why, like I said before, we focus on getting them at such a young age, so there's less reprogramming that we have to do, less bad behaviors, less everything that they would be dealing with. So if they're in that environment, it doesn't matter what the age is, we will curate our program to the child to make sure that they have the right resources. And whew, okay, this is the one. This is the one. Sensitive ears, but this is definitely a warning. You're going to hear some curse words, but I want you guys to see exactly what we deal with on the everyday and how it comes out of a child. So again, sensitive ears, if you're at your desk, if you have other people around, you might want to turn the volume down, might want to put some headphones in. But this is generally speaking what complex trauma looks like coming out of a kid in an episode. Oh, please don't give us the wheel of death. There we go. My mom in jail for murder. I'll murder your ass too, bitch. Hell no, bitch. You got me fucked up. Got me fucked up, nigga. I ain't doing shit to me, bitch. I'm gonna knock your ass out. Mom, what the fuck you mean, bro? I'm gonna get my mom. I'm gonna get my cousin with that gun, bitch, and blow your brain out. You better not come here again. Oh, ass nigga. Fuck you up, nigga. I had your mama in jail, bitch. Fuck you, what wrong with you, nigga? You better first. I don't get no fuck about him. Yeah, nigga, don't come back down to my house looking for shit, nigga. And yo, tell your drunk ass brother don't be trying to steal nothing from me, hoe ass nigga. You owe me $5, hoe ass. All right, we can just stop it there. Stop. There we go. All right. So what we just saw is a kid going through an entire episode, but if you listen to him and the words, nothing that he was saying actually correlated to whatever issue that was going on with the other boy. They were playing some game in the backyard, something happened, and he just snapped and went off, right? This is what we see all the time, and it just pours out of these kids because they have no other way to process, understand, and deal with what's going on in their lives. You heard him talk about his mom being in jail, him having access to a gun at a very young age, him ready to go to the extremes over essentially nothing. This is exactly what we were talking about. This is exactly what we're combating. And instead of leaning out and leaning away or telling them that violence is a taboo, we have to waver, or we have to deal with what we just saw, curate it, and then apply the proper solutions to make sure that they know, like, yeah, violence is cool, but if it's curated correctly, that's how we're going to apply it. We're not going to be outright violent like we just saw in that video. But here are some of the statistics. Why is this information important? Why is the conversation of complex trauma and CPD so important? Almost 70% of Black children grow up in a single family home. 2 of the top 3 causes of death for Black males between the ages of 1 and 19 are homicide and suicide. Bonus points if anybody knows what it is from 0 to 19. For every soldier that goes to war, there are 10 children suffering from trauma at home. So 93% of prison populations are males. Black people make up 38.4% of the prison population. Now, these numbers are a little bit old, but they're still applicable to what we're discussing right now. And this essentially is the outcome of what we saw in the previous slide. If the child is not stopped and properly cared for, these are the results. So these are the numbers that we are trying to lower, get rid of altogether, and just be the solution. The biggest thing for my team and my staff is we have to have very, very tough skin, and we have to be able to compartmentalize from a kid who's in the middle of an episode and if it's actually personal. And then obviously a child to an adult, it's never going to be too personal, but we really have to be able to deal with those levels of trauma, behavior, whatever. And because most of my staff and most of my counselors come from same the exact same environments, we essentially can sit there and go through the different waves and the different levels of aggression that the kids are going to display. And honestly, there's nothing that these kids have done, want to do, or think about doing that my staff hasn't already done. We are all basically reformed degenerates that decided to give back because we decided if we took this much from our communities, it's time to start giving it back. So we kind of know what we're dealing with, but it takes some tough skin. Solutions and healthy outlets. Develop self-awareness and bring subconscious to the conscious. This is what we do when we are telling the children about their own brains, teaching them about emotional functioning and emotional control. This is where we really get into what are you thinking in that moment? How are you feeling in that moment? And just starting there at that very primitive level of explain and express to me exactly what you feel right now and why allows them to start thinking about it and processing it better once it's verbally, I guess, out. And then we can all discuss it. And normally we figure out, oh, this wasn't as big of a deal as we thought it was. This is just how we have to respond to it. Strong support systems and patience. Shout out to my team, the Gorillas and the Miss Boys, Eddie, Kay, Xavier, Kevin Dixie, Mike Sedini, Jake. These are all of the people who have helped me create the support system for the kids. And they do a great job, top to bottom. I kind of already talked about it, how they are the ones that come from the same community, but a little bit more specific, the school that we actually work with, most of my counselors attended the exact same school. So they know everything about that environment. One of them is actually in the school every single day as a site supervisor. So we have boots on the ground. We're in the schools. We will pop up at classrooms if we need to. The best part about this part, I will say, is the support and the access that we get from the parents. I have not had any type of pushback when it comes to giving the boys the tough love aspect of the program. And if anything, some of the parents would ask us to go a little bit deeper into that, but we do what we see is necessary. But the parents have allowed us to really, really start to reprogram what their children have learned. And essentially, we've never had a problem. Anytime that we want to do anything with the boys, most of the moms are very responsive, very good with the communication. And we're all on the same page as far as the life lesson that they took from us that they need to apply to the rest of the week, the rest of the month, whatever have you. We do wellness checkups as far as homework. We have workout Wednesdays. We do it all. So I'm on the phone with a parent talking about a kid at least once a day, minimum. And then if I'm not, it's one of my staff members that is. Healthy tools and liaisons for conflict resolution and consistent and positive role models. We already talked about the role models part, but the healthy tools, liaisons, and conflict resolution. This is where I say we use firearms as our martial art. Obviously, most kids are going to get introduced to firearms from some sort of entertainment, whether it's social media, whether it's video games, movies, whatever have you. And that's fine. it's not a bad thing. It's just making sure that they understand that that is entertainment. And for the most part, it's not going to be correct firearm safety or correct firearms handling. So, one of our most effective workshops and the exercises that we do is that we'll bring up at least 5 to 10 videos, content videos online of their favorite artists. So, we'll ask them, who do you like to listen to? Who do you like to watch on streaming? Who? And then we'll bring them up handling a firearm. And after the boys have already gone through at least the first 4 firearm safety rules, uh, knowing your target and what's beyond, knowing the condition of your gun, keeping your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. And I'm blanking on the fourth one, but someone will bring it up. Yeah, after they learn that, they get to watch on the screen of their influences handling the guns wrong. And we tell them, yo, tell us what they're doing that's incorrect. So they'll point it all out. Fingered on the trigger, they flag somebody, everything, everything. And then where were we at? The strong support systems. Big shout out to every single sponsor that decided to get on board with Kids to Kings. The support has been amazing. Ruger specifically has rolled out the red carpet for us as their first youth shooting program. So that's huge. We need more people that are involved in the conversation the way Ruger decided to. Davidson's is one of the top manufacturer, or not manufacturers, one of the top distributors in the country of firearms. They decided to get on board. Arms Corps, they have sent these boys at least 30,000 rounds, and it has been amazing. Ruger has sent at least now 20 guns. Davidson's, they were the first that said that they would open up their inventory to whatever firearms we needed to teach the boys. So big thank you. And the appreciation can't necessarily be articulated how much their support means to us, because we always talk about how in the gun industry we need to reach out to different demographics. We have every single women's cliche event that goes on throughout the year, but we don't really have that much focused on the next generation, most specifically the underserved community, being the Black community from the gun industry specifically. So the fact that these brands were ready to jump on without any doubt or any hesitation was amazing. Big shout out to Kevin Dixie and Aiming for the Truth, because he opened up a 40-acre facility for these boys to do literally whatever they need to do. Firearm safety classes, reading classes, everything. They do financial literacy classes, everything. These boys get the most, I would say, original experiences that children do not get to experience. They got all access and VIP treatment at the recent NRA show. The NRA treated them with the utmost respect and nepotism. Again, Ruger, they're the ones that brought us out there for that. It was great. They even gave one of the boys I think it was a $1,300 gun for his birthday. And it's just amazing. Like, those are the moments that these kids are going to take with them and remember for the rest of their lives. As we were leaving the event, one of the boys asked, he was like, hey, can we come back here for my birthday? And I was like, not exactly, but we can do something similar. So now we've got them fixated on being professionals in the gun industry. And if there's anything that we need more of, is the next generation getting involved, because our opposition has figured out if we fixate and focus on the next generation, we can essentially get all of our legislation and messages pushed to the top, because who's going to argue with kids, because it's bad optics. So on the PR side, Kids to Kings solves all of those problems. There isn't a talking point that you can apply to us, because we have essentially focused on destroying any type of stereotype, any type of misconception of what this actually is and what the Second Amendment is. So big shout out to all of our supporters. And if you'd like to get on board, please contact me, because we could always use more support. But yeah, I want to say this is the last slide. Yes, it is.
Perfect. Thank you, Devin. So I actually, before I put it the Q&A up to see if anybody has any questions. You can oh, I forgot to mention it this time. If you're new to our webinar, down at the, I believe it should be the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A feature. We don't, since this is a webinar format, we don't have like your normal chat feature. So if you click on that, you can put questions there, and then we'll read them and Devin will answer the questions. But I was wondering, I guess a couple of things, but to start with, a lot of times when we're talking about like high rates of violence and crime in an area, there's a lot of education that goes into kind of firearm safety, but not having firearms, around. And so you guys are kind of doing the opposite of that. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more exactly about like the curriculum that you use for the kids. And then also you said you've got supportive parents, but is there any kind of hesitation in the world when it comes to actually taking the kids out to the range?
Okay, first. Wait, all right. What was the first question?
Just
I'll have to answer the second question first.
yeah, the first question was just explaining the curriculum a little bit more.
Oh, the curriculum. The curriculum starts with the mental health side. No matter, they don't see guns until they go through the mental health presentation. They have to understand emotional functions, how your brain is operating, and it's not like they have to get into like the intricate science of it, but you have to be able to act right if we're going to put a firearm in your hand, no matter if it's a SIRT pistol or if it's a 22 pistol. But you're going to understand that this is not a toy and that these are used for certain things. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but in the wrong hands, it will be a bad thing. Kevin Dixie uses this line a lot. He says, guns can either be a tool of oppression or a tool of empowerment. So it's your choice. And we just guide them to the path of empowerment.
And then just the question of whether or not you get any hesitation from parents on the interaction with the firearms, because I'm sure not everybody, interacts with firearms in their world or has guns.
No, I will say no. If any hesitation is had, it's normally through question form, not necessarily like not wanting to come. They just want to understand everything that's going on. And generally speaking, when we get to the range portion, we invite all the moms out too, because we have a female instructor that can go work with them as well while we are working with the boys. So it's full circle. They get to do something, the boys get to do something, and then we all get to do it together. So no, we've gotten past that by being able to provide something else for the moms as well.
And then one of our questions is, do you have any programs for young girls? Because you keep talking about the boys, but
No,
is it open to girls?
no, I'm sorry. No, it's not, because boys need their own haven to be boys. So, and also I'm not a female, so I can't teach a female how to grow. Like that, like I said in the beginning of the presentation, there's 1,000,000,005 different women organizations that are focusing on women. How many of them are focusing on young boys specifically? Not that many. So that is going to be my focus. That is going to be what I am always going to be just focused on. It not to say that the women aspect or the little girls aspect isn't important, but from what I'm seeing from my demographic, if we can change the boys who are supposed to be the leaders of their community, that trickle down effect will just naturally happen.
Do you know of any? I you mentioned a bunch of women's programs, but do you know of any that are specifically working kind of in the inner city for women?
Uh, like
Now I'm
specifically
thinking
firearms.
Walk the Talk probably needs another organization that maybe they could work on.
Sounds like you just volunteered. I'm gonna tell
No,
Mike.
I did not. um,
That works specifically with guns.
yeah.
Prime Protection STL in St. Louis. They are our affiliate program that's eventually going to be our second establishment of Kids to Kings. But they do a lot of women's only and children's classes where they'll bring in the moms, the daughters, and all of that. But other than that, there's 1,000 of them out there. We just got in contact with this. It's the Middle Tennessee Gun Club, and they focus heavily on. They're essentially the same thing as Kids to Kings, but for women. So they go over hygiene. They go over everything that women want to go over. stuff that we are not going to talk about as men. But yeah, they're great. Middle Tennessee Gun Club. They're actually just in Georgia with us at the Train and Learn event.
Another one of our questions, well, not a question, but a suggestion, but I'd be interested to know if you guys have done anything with this. But one of the overlooked issues in this arena is lead exposure and its impacts on human behavior, and just recommending evaluating potential exposure to children going forward.
I mean, we're at an outdoor range and we have a lot of D-lead wipes, I guess. So mm, that's, I guess that's the answer to that. We don't really, yeah. We make sure they clean their hands before they eat, but I don't
Uh,
know, man. As a firearms instructor, like I'm pretty sure I got lead in me for forever. So if
uh,
that's byproducts of the kids, sorry, I don't know, but yeah, they're good. We're outside, so we don't really do anything at an indoor range where you have to like really be worried about that.
Greg, I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Chris Chang. He was a competitor. He won History Channel's Top Shot. He's done a lot with firearms education. He has an organization for, I always get the acronym messed up, for Asian Pacific Islanders. I never remember which that, but he's done a lot in the education community, and he's actually talking a lot about this now. I think his handle is Top Shot Chris Chang,
Yep.
because he's going through, he's had some pretty severe exposure to lead poisoning, and he's been going through some medical things with that. So, and maybe I'm sure you know Chris, Devin, if you
Yeah,
haven't,
yeah, 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 yeah.
an
I
introduction.
talk to
But
Chris all the time.
so that is becoming more of a topic of conversation in at least some of the instructor world,
Chris is
specifically.
also, yeah, I was gonna say Chris is also an instructor and a competition shooter. They'll shoot like in season. I mean, competition shooters will shoot 10,000 rounds a week, 5,000 rounds a week. So their lead exposure is a little bit more than the boys shooting like 250 rounds outside. So not to say it's not a concern, but it's not necessarily high on our priority list right now because, like I said, we focus on their hygiene because we have a tiny home on the facility, so they can wash up, do whatever they need to before they even get in the car to go eat. So
And then I have a question, because you mentioned, suicide as well as homicide prevention and walk the talk, which is, we're actually going to have the walk the talk people speaking in September on their programs and what they do with mental health competency courses for gun owners, and then also teaching mental health professionals about the specifics of gun ownership, the nuance of gun ownership. But one of the things that gets talked about a lot is having a safe place to store your firearm. I know that I'm assuming the students that are the kids that you work with, they go out to the range, that guns stay with you guys, all of that. But do you do any training and work with them on like lethal means security for firearms in their own
yep,
home?
yep.
You
We
talk a
actually
little
do
bit about
home visits. So we'll take the yellow uh fake guns and we'll do this in the home. We'll go over the firearm safety rules, we'll hang out, kick it, do whatever, right? And then we'll randomly leave the gun somewhere to see how the child will react to it and see if they're going to come get an adult or are they going to actually like fiddle with it, toy with it at all. For the most part, we haven't had anybody like actually go pick it up. We had one kid try to clear the gun, and I was like, it doesn't work. But yeah, safe storage. That's what we preach to the parents more than anything. Most of our moms have guns, so if they need a safe, we'll provide that to them for free. Thanks to Regal, actually, Regal is another big supporter of ours. But yeah, yeah, we preach safe storage to the parents and then how to handle it if it's in an open space or an accessible space for the kids.
So, because you mentioned the parents being out on the range, so then do you have programming specifically geared towards the parents that's separate from their kids?
In the aspect of safe storage, no, we have that conversation together. We only separate for moms and the kids when it's actually time to like get up on the line and start learning and shooting and stuff. But that's just when they'll go work with our female instructor and then we'll be working with the boys.
And do you guys have plans for expansion? Because I know you mentioned you partner with a school, but what are your plans kind of for
Whew.
the future with
Uh,
it?
So we already basically have a setup to expand in St. Louis. Like I said, the prompt protection team, they've decided to jump on board. They have a classroom, an FFL, a range. So that's what we essentially need to expand. That way we can teach and we can exercise. Um, so yeah, that is probably the first place that we'll expand to. And then after that, my goal is to go on a city, 5 to 7 city tour to see where the next installment of Kids the King should be.
Perfect. Do we have any more questions? Oh, sorry, I didn't even see one. I've seen the pop culture of gun use created via media with folks who are new to firearm handling and operation. How do you get new shooters to separate that video game mentality from the real life handling?
I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody knows you can't respawn after you die.
Well, probably not the
I
respawn
mean,
part, but the
I mean, that's not really a thing with the kids that we deal with because they've already had to deal with a firearm in a bad connotation in real life. So it's already a real life thing for them. We're just taking it from being a negative to a positive. Most of our kids are already compartmentalizing from entertainment and movies to guns. But again, that's a byproduct of them having to live in the environments that they live
anybody else?
in. And the exercise that I spoke about earlier, we put it up on the screen. Like, yeah, this isn't how you hold that gun. This is that gun's magazine will go empty. He can't just stand there and shoot for 10 minutes without reloading. So yeah, and then obviously once they start handling the guns, they figure out, oh, this is real.
I think I'm trying to remember. Years ago, I was a scholar for the National Park Service is trying to do something with their Coltsville National Historic Site, which is in Hartford, Connecticut, and it was a joint program with the National Park Service, Organization of American Historians, and then there was a public history conference at the same time, and there was a panel at the end of the week. That we were all there, that was specifically residents of Hartford, because Hartford has a pretty high crime rate in it.
Mhm.
I guess especially when Colt moved out of Coltsville and into different parts of Hartford, it kind of left a vacuum. Long time ago. And so they were talking specifically about violence and gang violence in Hartford and dealing with firearms there. And that all of the, most of the people had either been affected by, violence with firearms or had been in prison for gang involvement. And I remember them talking, somebody asked what they wish that they would have known ahead of time. And now I'm rambling, but it was an interesting conversation because someone said that they never recognized, they wish they had been taught the power of the gun
Mhm.
beforehand. That it wasn't just something that they saw as this cool thing, this, thing that they see in the street, the thing that they see in the movie. They wish they had been taught the power of the gun. Is that something that you've kind of encountered? There's almost like this larger than
Yes.
life presence with it.
This is one of the, I'd say, would could be considered a loss for Kids the Kings. We had a potential participant of the program who was a cousin to two of the boys that were already in the program get killed in a shootout at the age of 14 in the middle of Atlanta. It made national news. It was wild, but that was probably one of the situations that hit us as a staff pretty hard and really started to make us focus on like, yo, y'all need to understand that, like, again, these are not toys. You cannot respawn from getting shot. And the sad part was he didn't get shot by anybody who was shooting at him. He got shot by somebody who was supposed to be with him, who didn't know how to use a gun correctly and shot him in the back of the head.
Oh,
Yeah. So those type of stories, we got enough of them to where yeah, we really emphasize on like, yo, what's coming out of this gun, you can't bring it back. So understand that when we are pulling triggers, it's for a reason.
anyone else?
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, I just, it was an interesting observation about the idea of the power of a gun and people not really realizing that before they pick it up. and how it was because that person had served prison time for his gang involvement, and talking about wanting education, wishing he had had education before he was 14 years old and encountered his first gun with the organization that he was affiliated with.
And that's something that's becoming a lot more prevalent. That's why we specifically target like combating gang violence, is because in Atlanta, whew, kids are joining gangs at like 10, 11 years old. So that is literally the influence that we are trying to combat, is that these kids, it's not like a drummed up like theatric or anything. Like kids are literally joining gangs and getting guns at 10, 11, 12 years old and shooting it out. Like every weekend, you can look somewhere and there's a kid that had access to a gun that shouldn't. Pair that with lack of emotional intelligence, lack of impulse control, you've created a monster.
And here's a question: if someone wants to support your organization, how can they do so?
Right now, I will now preference this. Our biggest goal right now is to build our classroom on the 40-acre range. So if you want to do anything, donations are the biggest thing. That's basically where all of our focus is right now. The boys are about to be back on because their season is about to start again. So they'll be back on the range next week. And what we need more than anything is to expand to a larger classroom that we can bring more kids into. So walkthetalkamerica.org/kids to kings, or kids dash to dash kings. Donate there, please. And let us know who you are donating so we can make sure we give you the proper respect and shout out for that. But yeah, our biggest thing is we do everything for the kids for free. There is no charge to the parents. So I mean, my staff completely all volunteers. Obviously, Walk the Talk America nonprofit. Like nobody's making money from this. Everything goes right back into either the resources that we get for the kids, the place that maintenance of the place that we use for the kids, feeding the kids, everything. The only thing we don't really have a need for right now is guns, thanks to Root.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Devin. And also thank you for being flexible with
Oh,
our issues
of
last
course.
week. Like I said at the beginning of this call, we will put this up on our video library on firearmsresearchcenter.org. And then just for next month, just so you know, we haven't made the formal announcement yet because I just confirmed it like 10 minutes before I went on the call. But we will be doing it on June 13th, Friday, June 13th, same time, 12 p.m. Mountain Time. And this will be an attorney from Pennsylvania. And I'm not 100% sure on the specifics of his talk. I will post that and share that on our website as soon as we know, probably in the next couple of days. But it will be for continuing legal education credit. So it is an attorney speaking. So there'll be an hour of CLE credit offered at that one. But thank you
Gotcha.
so much, Devin. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And we'll see you guys next month.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right,
Have a good
thanks.
one.